Okay, so we're looking at the Exponentials video 1. So this is our intro to exponentials. So what is an exponent? If you look, an exponent, an example would be this guy. And what are the parts of it? Well, the big thing, the big number or variable at the bottom is called the base. And then whatever that little number up at the top is, that is our exponent. So we've been looking at examples already where we look at an x squared or a x plus 2 squared. So this guy that I'm underlining, that's my base, the big number at the bottom, and this would be our exponent. So lately we've just been dealing with, and remember, let's start. When we broke down that x squared, we realized that it was x times x. So that means the exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base by itself. So then when we were even talking about this, we had x plus 2. It meant that we did x plus 2 times x plus 2. So here was my base, and I multiplied it twice by itself. So if a constant or variable does not have an exponent, it is automatically an exponent of 1. And some of you might have seen me draw that in there. Like if we have, let's think of an example. We had an x times an x. These have exponents of 1. It's like an understood 1, like your coefficient. You have an understood 1 in front of it. It's a 1x to the 1 power. That's a lot of 1s to write when it's understood, so you could just write it as x. So like we said, in examples, and what does it mean? So if you look, here's my base, and here's my exponent. That means I have 3 4s. So what does it mean? It means we have 4 times 4 times 4. So what does it equal? Well, if you put it in your calculator, you could do 4 to the 3rd power, and in this case, it gives you 64. What about this one? 2wm squared. So if it doesn't have an exponent, it means it has an exponent of 1. So what does this one look like? Well, I have 1, 2. I have 1w, but I have 2 m's. So in this case, it's still just 2wm squared. There was nothing to multiply the 2 by. What about b to the 8? Well, my base is b, my exponent is 8. The exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base by itself. So it's going to be 8b's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8b's. And it still just equals b to the 8th power. We don't know what these variables equal, so we just say b to the 8th. So I have 3 squared, which means I have 2 3's, and I have 4 p's. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So what does that look like? Well, now you can multiply out 3 times 3, which is 9. P to the 4th power is in its simplest form. So that's a little background about exponents. So now let's start looking at exponential rules. So anything raised to the 0 power is going to be 1. All right, so if you don't believe me, let's look at 4 to the 0 power. If you type in 4 to the 0, you get 1. So anything to the 0 power is going to be 1. It doesn't matter if it's m to the 0, it's 1. If you have right here, it might take you some steps because you have 8x squared b to the 0, so this one is going to be 1. So now you need to multiply 8 times 1, which is 8x squared. If it's b to the 0, or anything to the 0, it goes away. Looking at that one at the bottom, 7x, the whole thing is to the 0 power. That means all of it goes to 1. So your answer is 1. Looking at this one, 0 is on the outside, so that means everything goes to the 0 power. So it's to the 1. Okay, so we looked at when exponents are 0, Now, the second rule we're going to look at today is when we have negative exponents. So, when it comes to negative exponents, the rule is you can't have them. We can only work with positive exponents. So, to turn a negative exponent into a positive exponent, just remember this little saying. You have to cross the line and change the sign. All right, so crossing the line, and what do you mean by line? Well, I mean the fraction line, okay? You have to cross the line and change the sign. If it's on top of a fraction and you move it to the bottom, or on the bottom and you move it to the top, it changes the sign. So if you look at, I'm going to skip this one and come back to it. If you look at 1 over m to the negative 5, there's your negative exponent. Here's your line. You have to cross the line and move it to the top. So then you would have 1 times m to the 5th over what's left on bottom is 1, and I think I'm confusing you this one. We can take away the 1, you're just left with m to the 5th. So looking back at that first one, it doesn't have a line. So you draw 1. Anything over 1 is still equal to itself. So you can turn a whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. So now you cross the line, you take this guy, he's with the negative exponent, and you change the sign. So you have 6 over x to the 4th. This is all we're doing, okay? Look at this guy, negative w to the negative 6. Well, you have to remember that negative doesn't go with the w. It goes with the coefficient. A negative goes with the coefficient. So that number in front of the w is a negative 1. Okay, negative 1. And we want to cross the line to change the sign, so you have to put it over 1. That w to the negative 6 is what you're going to move. So you have negative 1 over w to the 6th. 7 to the negative 2. Put it over 1. Cross the line and change the sign, so you have 1 over 7 squared. Same thing here. Now you got 2. 1's on top. X to the negative square needs to go on the bottom. Y to the negative 3rd needs to go to the top. So they're basically switching spots. Look at this second, or this one right here. Put it over 1. Find your exponents that are negative. It's what's going to have to go to the bottom. Everything else can stay where it's at. Okay, don't get confused. You only have to move the base and exponent that are negative. Then you have y 1/2 times y to the negative 3rd. Well, keep in mind, you already have a fraction. That y to the negative 1/3 is on top. Now, it needs to move to the bottom. So you have 1 over 2 y to the 3rd.